Are you actually and currently recovering from your eating disorder? Hello, my name is Stephanie. I'm a therapist out in Long Island, New York that specializes in the treatment of eating disorders and body image issues. If you're interested in learning more about that or just general mental health, please click the subscribe button down below. A common question I hear either from the family of one of my clients or someone else or just on different formats online is, am I actually recovering? And that question is absolutely wonderful to ask. And this is something that I do want you to understand. If you are in recovery from an eating disorder or about to enter recovery from an eating disorder, recovery from an eating disorder is super weird and confusing. And the thing is that we really need to recognize is that recovery is not linear, and I did a whole video on this. I'll leave that link in the description below. But recovery doesn't happen just like every single day you're getting better, 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 better. You're going to have slips. You're going to have days that are harder. You're going to have days that seem like your eating disorder is winning, and that is all part of recovery. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing that you're doing bad or wrong. It's just part of the process. So that's something that you need to understand right off the bat. Also, during that process, it's really important that you're being forgiving toward yourself, because that is something that is just part of recovery. And by hurting yourself, by being judgmental or non-forgiving toward yourself, that's going to inhibit your recovery and make it much more difficult. The other big part that we need to talk about is your healthy self and your eating disorder self. I have a whole video on it. I'll leave that link in the description below as well. But this is what we really need to understand as it pertains to recovery. The eating disorder self and the healthy self are two separate entities that want two very different things. What happens is that in recovery there are wins, but that win for one part of yourself is going to be a loss for the other part. So basically it's like this intrapersonal, which is like within yourself, power struggle. And this is really difficult. Let's say lunch is a really difficult meal for you and you finally eat your entire lunch. Awesome for your healthy self, that's such a win. But then your eating disorder self is not very happy, and that's going to be very aggravated. So it gets really difficult to discern kind of why you might not be in a good mood. It's like, okay, I did something that was healthy and recovery oriented, but I still feel very crappy. Maybe I'm not recovering. Maybe I'm really not doing so well. Maybe I'm not doing as well as I had thought I was doing. And this is something that is good that you're thinking that. And I'll explain why in a second, but it's something that the very reason that this is happening is because of that struggle between the eating disorder self and the healthy self. So the reason why I say it's actually pretty good that you're asking those questions. Oh, am I really in recovery? Am I really doing as well as I had hoped I was doing? This is really important because if you remember, probably early on in your recovery, very much when the eating disorder was winning more often than not, there probably wasn't as much of a struggle. Your eating disorder got what it wanted, it was happy, and it just did its thing. Of course, you weren't doing too well or being too happy because of the fact that, your eating disorder takes a lot from you and energy and all that stuff, and there's a whole slew of things that we could talk about, but that's not what this video is about. So early on, there wasn't probably much of a struggle between your healthy self and your eating disorder self. Now that you're questioning all of those things, that just shows that there is such a struggle between the healthy self and the eating disorder self, and that is part of recovery. And there is no time limit for that. There's no saying that, okay, after 3 months that's going to be gone. No. There are going to be days that your eating disorder wins. There are going to be days that your healthy self wins. What's important is that your healthy self is growing, and what's important is that you're being honest with your treatment team. It doesn't mean that your healthy self will always win 70% of the time, and that if it is more often than not winning 70% of the time, that maybe it'll go down to 60. It's something that we have to work through together as a treatment professional and the person who's going through the eating disorder and recovery. But just being patient with yourself, not putting a time constraint on yourself, and being very non-judgmental toward yourself. Another thing that you have to recognize that in recovery, as you get further along in recovery, there are going to be new challenges, and this is normal. So let's say you are now just starting to eat what you need to be eating throughout the day, but you have a very big fear of restaurants and going out to eat, and then you challenge yourself by going out to a restaurant, and all of a sudden you see that your eating disorder is very strong in that. that is a new struggle, and that's something that's important because you have to recognize that you weren't able to do that a few months ago, and it is recovery oriented that you're doing that, and now it's a whole new struggle that's going to aggravate your eating disorder, and you could work through that. But that is something to understand that that will happen. That's nothing to say that you're not recovery oriented or anything like that. It will have other struggles surface, and that's part of recovery and normal. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below about what your thoughts are if you've ever had a struggle like this in recovery, and if you have any tips for anyone else who might be going through that. Also, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking my face over here, and I wish you patience with yourself on your journey to finding your state of balance. Hope to see you in my next video.